Hey guys, welcome. Ryan Laniak back here with you guys. Hope you guys are having a great week. It's been cold and rainy here the last couple of days. Starting to feel a little bit like it should have felt in April, and now we're almost in June, so it's fun. Never really know what month we're in up here in Alberta. So just want to again let you guys know that this group is all about identifying the ways in which rejection slow you down and then coming up with ways to move past it. And over the last couple of weeks, we talked about the different ways that you experience rejection, how the pain of rejection is different from the fear of rejection, and the different levels that you experience rejection on, and all those sorts of things. And those are all really, really important. And as we move forward through June, we're going to really start diving into and understanding and helping you understand the way in which you can start moving past rejection. And today, what I wanted to talk to you about is the ways that rejection kind of slows you down. And one of my mentors said this the other day, and I laughed, like literally laughed out loud when he said it because I couldn't believe how bang on he was. And basically, what he said was, people will do almost anything, to avoid hearing no. And I started thinking about that, and I was like, wow, you know what? I think he's right. And that afternoon, I happened to be talking to a client, and we were talking about his team and how things were going. And I asked him how they were dealing with rejection. He's like, oh, rejection's not the problem. I was like, okay, well, what's the problem then? And one of the things he said was, well, they're just not taking enough action. They're not talking to enough people. I said, oh, okay, so why aren't they talking to enough people? Well, they get busy, they get into all this busy work and they feel like they're busy and they do all these things to make them feel busy rather than contacting more people. And I said, well, why would they do that? And he's like, I don't know. It's weird. They just would rather avoid contacting people. And in his business, the only way for them to grow and succeed and earn money is to contact people, like in most sales organizations or network marketing companies or anything like that. You're not in business if you're not talking to people, right? If you're not in a position where somebody can say yes or no to you, chances are you're not going to see a lot of success. So anyways, I knew exactly what was going on, and I wanted him to come to it because that's kind of the way I do things. I like to help people discover things for themselves. And it was a painful conversation. And if this client's listening, you know how painful it was because you were part of it. And eventually he got to the point where he understood that and this is the question I asked him to get him to see it. I said, well, let me ask you this. Every single person in your team, I know that every week you do a top 25 list, a list of the top 25 prospects that that are on their list. And they kind of work through that. Said if every one of those lists, if all 25 people were guaranteed to say yes, how many people, and that doesn't mean they're going to answer the phone every time, but how many contacts would they make to get through those 25? If you knew that no matter what, they would say yes. It's like, oh God, they'd be calling them nonstop until they got them on the phone. Said, so then why aren't they now? If we've established that they're going to say yes, they'll do whatever it takes. They'll move heaven and earth to talk to them. Why aren't they doing that now? And he looked at me. Well, we're on kind of this kind of face to face over the internet and the interweb there. Zoom was the software that we were using. And he said, he looked at me, kind of looked down. He's like, because they're afraid of hearing no. They're afraid of rejection. I said, yeah. Right? When you remove the possibility of no, people will do everything, right? If you have a guaranteed yes, you will do whatever it takes to get in front of that person, to make that offer. But when you're not sure, when there's some doubt, when they're like somebody that said no before, you can get very creative, and you'd be surprised how creative people get to avoid hearing no. And I want you guys to really think about how creative you're getting. And maybe if you've got a team, how creative your team can get, right? one of the things that I'm really, really good at is research. I will do a lot of research. I love it. I love reading. And hey, I've got to create content for you guys. I got to make my program the best. I got to stay up to date with all the latest coaching tools and the latest research in mental toughness and the latest sales studies and statistics and everything like that. And that's one of my things that I do to avoid rejection. Right? Again, in my business, it's no different than in your business. If I'm not in a position where I have somebody on the phone who can either say yes or no, or who has said yes, I'm essentially out of business, right? I've got to be talking to people. I've got to be putting myself in the face of rejection. And even though I know exactly how to master rejection, I think I've done pretty well at being able to do that, going through all the years that I've done it. There's still some days where I'll get lost in, I need a research day. Just need a research day. And that's one of the things that I do. So what are some of the other things? One of the common ones is checking email, right? Well, we become so addicted to these things, right? And hey, again, I'm speaking from experience here. I'm just as addicted. My wife would say probably more so than anybody else, because I've got that thing on me all the time, because that's where my business is. That's my lifeblood, is that phone. If I'm not doing a Zoom call with a client, I'm on the phone with a client or a potential client, right? And checking emails. How often do you really need to respond, right? People, I mean, guys, you can read some of the studies that are out there about how often people go and check their emails. And the reason they're doing that, again, and it's not always, but sometimes, is to avoid hearing no, avoid being put in the position where they're going to hear no. And that's not good. Social media, right? Checking Facebook, making sure that, oh, I got to see how many likes I got on that post. I got to see what's going on out there. And one of the things that has happened with social media is that now it can be used as prospecting, right? And I talked to a lot of people who are doing quite well in various industries. And one of this leader who's making multi-millions of dollars, he said, people will hide from rejection in social media. They'll do their prospecting on social media because when somebody says no on social media, it doesn't hurt as bad. And what you'll find is people will go on there and they'll try and do some digging and never actually send an actual message. They'll never really do like even a Facebook Live or something like this. There's all sorts of different things. They'll just be on there checking up and seeing what's going on. And how many times a day do you do that? How many times a day does your team do that when they could be making calls, right? And one of the other things that is really great about rejection that people really get stuck in is procrastination, right? And this is something that not only happens with new prospects, because, hey, I understand if you're doing cold prospecting, it's tough. I've done door-to-door sales. I've done all sorts of sales. I remember walking into some, when I was in the automotive industry, walking into some dealerships that I've never even been in this town before, had no idea who worked there, and I just walked in cold and introduced myself. That is not fun. Like it's tough. But you don't know how many times I sat in the car and was like, oh, I should return this call. Oh, I got to return this email. And it took me a while to get out of the car and go through the door, right? So people will procrastinate on things. And then they'll do this with existing clients as well. When a client calls in and they're concerned about something hasn't gone right. They feel like there's going to be an argument, or they've got to answer to that client. They will procrastinate. Oh, I'll call them back tomorrow. It's not that important, and hope that it kind of goes away. And these little things, they seem like checking email. Yeah, that seems like it's productive. But at the end of the day, how productive is it? Because how often you get an email that you absolutely need to respond to within the next 10, 15 minutes. Usually if somebody needs you, they will call you. If it's that urgent, you won't just get an email, you also get a phone call, right? Same with social media. You're not going to find anything on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn that is absolutely urgent that you need to be putting off making your calls, making your contacts, that sort of thing. Same with the the paperwork, right? Paperwork is great. I just read a line in a book I was reading, and it was something like 80% of sales is paperwork. The other 20% is the stuff that leads to paperwork, right? And it's very easy because, hey, you don't get paid if you don't fill out that paperwork. But look at when you're doing it. Right? A lot of people will, and this was a potential client I was talking to a couple of weeks ago. And we were talking about how many calls he made and on a weekly basis and how those calls were going and all those different things. And I said, okay, well, how many people did you actually talk to? He's like, oh, I just leave voicemails. No one ever answers my phone calls. And we went into a whole discussion around that. And I was like, well, what time are you calling at? He's like, well, I work part-time and I'm doing this part-time. So I usually call, and it was at like 9:30 in the morning till 11 in the morning. And he was calling friends and family. He was in network marketing. So he wasn't calling businesses. He was calling friends and family. Well, what are most friends and family doing between 9:30 and 11 a.m. in the morning? Working. Most of them are working, right? So now he was setting himself up to make the calls, which was good. Hey, good job, you're making the calls. But he was deliberately making them at a point in time when he knew that people wouldn't answer. And then he could live in the story that, well, no one answers their phone. No one returns my voicemails. All of those things. That's not good. That's not good at all. And then one of the worst ways that rejection shows up and that people avoid hearing no, aside from checking emails, social media, that all stuff all falls into busy work. And then you got the procrastination. But one of the worst ways that it shows up is not making an offer. A lot of people will, and I've sat with people. I was training or when I was in sales management, I was on a field call with somebody just to kind of see how they were doing. And I was just there. He, well-trained guy, like he had experience. It wasn't like I was training him brand new. I was just there to kind of tag along, meet some of the people in his territory, that sort of thing. And he was sitting in front of a prospect, and we're sitting there. He was having a great conversation and told him all the info, did the pitch great. Everything was great. And then all of a sudden, he just left. It just ended. Like it came to an abrupt end. He's like, hey, thanks for seeing you, and we'll touch base soon. Never asked for a sale. Never established a follow-up plan. Nothing like that. And we got back to the car, and I asked him about it. He's like, oh, he wasn't ready. I was like, well, he seemed like he was genuinely interested. I mean, what could it have hurt asking? He may have surprised you. You could have found out some more info, all these different things. And guess what? That guy never became a client. Not once. Or never. To this day, I don't think he would have ever became a client because he never got asked. And you think that it's something that not a lot of people do. But if you go and pay attention, even when people think they're asking for a sale, they're not really. And again, it becomes that fear of rejection. It's they know that it's going to hurt. They know that they're going to feel self-doubt. They know they're going to feel shame and guilt and all those different things. But at the end of the day, they're just afraid to go through and do it. Right? And then the other thing that goes with that, not making an offer, is disqualifying people. Oh, he's not a fit. And this is something that is a really easy fix. And I'll tell you how to fix it. But first, they'll look at it and be like, oh, this guy's 55 years old, and my ideal prospect's 25. This is not going to be a fit. What a waste of time. So then they go in with this attitude that they're already disqualified. So rather than having a frank discussion and kind of going through things as they need to, they go in looking for reasons why they're not a fit and then disqualify them and say, hey, I couldn't make an offer anyways. But what if you went in with the mindset that, hey, they're not an ideal prospect, but obviously I'm meeting with him for a reason. Let's see if there's a fit here. Could they potentially be a fit? Perhaps, right? So guys, take some time over the next few days and think about some of the things that you're doing, and think about your business, think about your career, think about all of those different things and see what you're doing that may be hindering you, that may be rejection showing up. Because rejection is really, like we said off the top, if everybody was guaranteed to say yes, if everybody you talked to about your product wanted to buy, if everyone you talked about joining your team wanted to join your team, if every, and going back, some of you younger single people, if every member of whatever sex you're attracted to was guaranteed to say yes, how many dates would you go on? You would ask everybody that you found attractive because you knew they were going to say yes, right? So rejection is the X factor, right? Rejection is what stops people from going out and talking to as many people as possible because of the adverse effects, which we've talked about time and time again. So guys, we'll be back here next week with some great stuff. Stay tuned for that. And I look forward to seeing you guys. Have a great weekend. If you are in Northern Alberta, stay warm and dry. Take care, guys.